武士的女儿第2章。一天，仆人们从寺庙服务回来，兴奋地谈论京都的一场大火摧毁了伟大的弘安寺。由于这是深师太子庙，是最受民众欢迎的教派，因此人们对其重建的兴趣很普遍。国家的每个地方都在捐款。古代的佛教流亡者给越后留下了深刻的印象，以至于他很快就在给予支持方面超过所有其他省份。长冈正是这种热情的中心。每月的第1天和第15天是工人的假期，是收集的首选时间。由于我们的礼物大多是我们自己的产品，所以看着这些天在街上的人很有趣。除了我们自己的城镇居民外，每个人都带着一个篮子或包裹。每天每小时都有一群人从山上和邻近的村庄来，有的人拿着一捆捆的麻和绳子卷，或者一捆捆竹竿，走路时长尾拖在地上。来自纺织村庄的妇女扛着一捆捆的丝绸或棉花，农民拉着长推车，上面堆满了五谷、大米、小米、小麦、燕麦和豆子，最后农民的妻子在后面推着，通常他的背上会背着一个婴儿。所有这些礼物都被带到了一个专门为他们准备的大型建筑里，而且收集品每天都在增加。
A Daughter of the Samurai, Chapter 2. One day, the servants returned from temple service, talking excitedly about a fire at Kyoto, which had destroyed the great Honwanji. As this was the Prince Temple of Shin, the sect most popular among the masses, interest in its rebuilding was widespread, and donations were being sent from every part of the empire. The Buddhist exiles of ancient time had left their impress upon Ichigo to such an extent that it soon excelled all other provinces in eagerness to give. And Nagaoka was the very center of the enthusiasm. The 1st and 15th of each month, being workmen's holidays, were favorite times for collecting. And as our gifts were mostly of our own products, it was interesting to watch the people who thronged the streets on these days. Besides our own townsfolk, each one carrying a basket or bundle, groups kept coming each hour of the day from the mountains and from neighboring villages. There were men laden with bunches of hemp and coils of rope, or with bundles of bamboo poles, the long ends trailing on the ground as they walked. Women from weaving villages weighed it down with boats of silk or cotton, and farmers pulling long carts piled high with bales of the 5 grains: rice, millet, wheat, oats, and beans, with the farmer's wife, frequently with a baby on her back, pushing at the end. All these gifts were taken to a large building put up on purpose for them, and every day the collection grew.
有一天，我和医师就站在我们的大门内，看着人们经过。我注意到，几乎每个女人的头都裹在仆人们在厨房除尘或工作时穿的蓝白毛巾里。为什么每个人都在街上穿天奴吉？我问了。那些女人剪了头发，月宝大人。医师回答道。她们都是寡妇吗？我惊讶地问道。 习俗，寡妇剪掉脖子上的头发，把一半埋在丈夫身上，另一半留着，直到她自己死。
One day, Ishi and I were standing just within our big gateway, watching the people go by. I noticed that almost every woman had her head wrapped in the blue and white towel that servants wear when dusting or working in the kitchen. Why does everybody wear tengui on the streets? I asked. Those women have cut their hair, Itsubo-sama, Ishi replied. Are they all widows? I asked in astonishment, for it was the custom for a widow to cut off her hair at the neck and bury half of it with her husband, the other half being kept until her own death.
我想我这辈子从未见过这么多寡妇，但我很快就知道，这些女人把大部分头发都剪掉了，编成一根巨大的绳子，用来为新寺庙重要的中心横梁拉木材。我们自己的仆人从他们的头上剪下了一大束头发，但与农民阶级的热情相比，他们保留了足够的头发来遮盖他们的秃顶。然而，其中一个女仆出于宗教热情，切断了许多头发，以至于她不得不将婚期推迟3年，因为没有一个女孩可以以短发出家。那个时候，没有一个男人会有足够的勇气，冒着不祥之兆的风险，娶一个像寡妇头发的新娘。我们的家庭不属于佛教的身教派，但每个女人，无论教派，都想参与神圣的事业，所以我们每个人都增加了几束。头发被带到存放捐款物的大楼，并编织成又长又厚的绳子，然后就在搬运到京都之前，所有的礼物都经过精心准备的宗教仪式的洗礼。
I thought I had never seen so many widows in my life, but I soon learned that these women had cut off most of their hair that it might be braided into a huge rope to be used in drawing the lumber for the important center beam of the new temple. Our own servants had cut big bunches from their hats, but with more moderate enthusiasm than that of the peasant class. They had retained enough to dress it so as to cover their bold crowns. One of the maids, however, in religious fervor, had cut off so much that she had to postpone her marriage for 3 years. For no girl could marry with short hair. Not a man of those days would be brave enough to risk the ill omen of taking a bride with the cut hair of a widow. Our family did not belong to the Shin sect of Buddhists, but every woman of whatever sect wanted to have a part in the holy cause, so each of us added a few strands. The hair was taken to the building where the donations were kept and braided into long, thick ropes. Then, just before the removal to Kyoto, all the gifts were dedicated with an elaborate religious ceremony.
在我幼稚的头脑里，似乎那天世界上所有人都来到了长冈。几乎可以肯定的是，附近的乡村地区和所有邻近的村庄都空无一人，全都挤进了狭窄的街道。医师带我穿过这些街道去寺庙，最后我们安顿在了一个安全的地方。我紧紧地握着他的手站着，好奇地抬头看着金色和黑色漆的大神龛。 它高高的放在寺庙入口前的牛车上，弯曲的门敞开着，露出面容平静的佛陀，双手交叉站着。围绕着神社的底部是一个精致的框架，代表着天堂的五彩云，逐渐扩大并在上面展开。许多金色、银色、粉红色、紫色和橙色的荷花扭动在雕刻的云层中，仿佛漂浮在空中。它美得出奇。这2头牛是骄傲的农民为这次活动借来的。牛身上几乎挂满了鲜艳的丝绸条，这些丝绸条从牛角和牛鞍上垂下来，飘扬着。
It seemed to my childish mind that almost everybody in the world came to Nagaoka that day. Most certainly, the nearby country district and all the neighboring villages had emptied themselves into the narrow streets through which Ishi took me on our way to the temple. But at last, we were stationed in a safe place, and I stood holding tight to her hand and looking up wonderingly at the great shrine of gold and black lacquer, which was placed high on an ox cart just in front of the temple entrance. The curving doors were wide open, showing the calm-faced Buddha standing with folded hands, surrounding the base of the shrine, gradually widening and spreading above it. It was a delicate framework representing the 5 colored clouds of paradise. Many, many lotus blossoms of gold and silver, pink, purple, and orange twisted through the carved clouds and seemed to float in the air. It was wondrously beautiful. The 2 oxen, loaned by proud farmers of this occasion, were almost covered with strips of bright-colored silk dangling in long, fluttering streamers from horns and harness.
突然间一片寂静，然后随着众多声音的回归，铜锣声和寺庙音乐的声音交织在一起。看，月宝大人，医师说，神圣的佛祖开始了欣赏之旅。这是多年来圣者第一次从圣殿祭坛出来。今天是美好的一天。当牛拉紧并推着大木枝，镀金佛的神龛开始移动时，传来一声低吟：南无阿弥达，也就是你好，大佛。带着深深的敬畏，我低下头，双手合十，也低声说出圣语。
Suddenly, there was a moment's hush. Then, with the returning sound of a multitude of voices, mingled the beating of gongs and the shrill piping of temple music. Look, Itsubo-sama, said Ishi. The sacred Buddha is starting on the tour of appreciation. It is the first time in many years that the Holy One has come forth from the temple altar. Today is a great day. As the oxen strained and pushed against the big wooden yoke, and the shrine with the gilded Buddha began to move, a low murmur of Namu Amida Butsu burst through the air. With deep reverence, I bowed my head, and folding my hands together, I, too, whispered the holy words.
2根紫色和白色的弯曲长布系在宽阔的马车前面，远远超过牛，伸向前面诵经的祭司。这些绳子被许多男人和男孩、女人和女孩热切地拉着。 有些人还背着婴儿，还有所有年龄段的小孩。我看到了一个玩伴，医师，我哭了，太激动了，差点撕裂他的袖子。有圣贞子在抓着绳子，哦，我可以走到他旁边，也拿着绳子吗？哦，我可以吗？嘘，小家伙，你一定不能忘记温柔。是的，我会和你一起走，你的小手将帮助圣佛。
Two long twisted ropes of cloth, purple and white, were fastened to the front of the broad cart and reached far past the oxen to the chanting priests in front. These ropes were held by the eager hands of many men and boys, women and girls, some with babies on their backs, and little children of all ages. I saw a playmate. Is she? Is she? I cried, so excited that I almost tore her sleeve. There is Sadako-san holding the rope. Oh, may I walk beside her and hold the rope too? Oh, may I? Hush, little mistress, you must not forget to be gentle. Yes, I'll walk with you. Your little hands shall help the holy Buddha.
就这样，医师和我走进了游行队伍。也许在我的一生中，还没有哪一个小时能比我们跟在庄严的吟诵的祭司身后，手紧握着那辆摇摇晃晃、嘎吱作响的大牛车的拉绳，心中充满敬畏。穿越这些狭窄的街道时，更让我感到兴奋了。奉献的仪式我回忆得很模糊。新大楼挤满了各种捐赠的巨大金字塔，神龛被抬进来，放在紫色的幕布前，上面有一个大的纳粹徽章。祭司们穿着华丽的长袍，双手抱着水晶念珠在游行，到处都是香的味道，柔和的寺庙鼓声，到处都是南无阿弥达的低沉低语。在我的记忆中，大房间里只有一件事是清晰的，在祭坛前的一个平台上，有一圈乌黑的大绳子，是成千上万的妇女的头发做成的，圣佛就在上面。我回想起那一天，以为我在街上看到那么多寡妇的那一天，想起了我们的仆人，他们稀疏的头发扣在秃顶上，然后带着一种屈辱的痛苦。我想起我们自己的祭品被送来的那一天，因为在我妹妹又长又顺滑的直发旁边，还有一缕更短的卷发，弯曲成难看的波浪。
And so we walked in the procession, Ishi and I. Never in my life, perhaps, shall I experience an hour more exalted than when we passed through these narrow streets behind the Solemn, chanting priests, my hand clasped about the pulling cord of the great swaying, creaking cart, and my heart filled with awe and reverence. The services of dedication I recall very mistily. The new building was crowded with huge pyramids of donations of every kind. The shrine was carried in and placed before a purple curtain with a big swastika crest on it. There were marching, chanting priests in gorgeous robes with crystal rosaries around their folded hands. There was the fragrance of incense, the sound of soft temple drums, and everywhere low murmurs of Namu Amida Butsu. Only one thing in the great room stands clear in my memory. On a platform in front of the altar, with the holy Buddha just above, was the huge coil of jet black robe, made of the hair of thousands of women. My mind went back to the day when I thought I was seeing so many widows in the street, and to our servants with their scanty hair dressed over bold crowns. And then, with a pang of humiliation, I recalled the day our own offering was sent. For beside the long, glossy, straight wisps of my sister's hair lay a shorter strand that curved into ugly, mortifying waves.
即使经过这么多年，当我记得她因卷发而不得不忍受许多痛苦的考验时，我还是有点同情她。卷发在日本并不受欢迎，所以尽管我比我的姐妹们还小，但还是在10天内进行了3次理发。我一进屋就被安排在理发师的照顾下，这很不寻常，因为年长的人总是应该被首先照顾。洗完洗发水后，他立即用几乎沸腾的热茶和某种硬化油浸透了我的头发，然后他尽可能地把头发往后拉紧绑好。因此当他给我姐妹们梳理头发时，我就被搁置在一边。那时我的整个头都僵硬了，眉毛向上拉，不过我的头发暂时是直的，可以很容易地梳成2个闪闪发亮的圈，用抛光的细绳绑起来。对我来说，这是适合我的风格。从我记事起，我晚上总是小心翼翼地躺在我的小木质枕头上，但到了第2天早上，我的脖子上肯定会有小的弯曲，头顶的圈圈上也会有可疑的曲线。我多么羡慕挂在我房间里的卷轴照片中宫廷女子们长而笔直的卷发呀！有一次我反抗了，并向我的护士说了回话。护士试图在我的一次粘人的经历中安慰我，善良的老医师立刻原谅了我，但我的妈妈无意中听到，并把我叫到她房间。我记得当我鞠躬坐在她的垫子前时，我有点闷闷不乐。她说话时严厉着看着我。月宝，她说，你不知道卷发就像动物的头发吗？武士的女儿不应该像野兽。我非常惭愧，再也没有抱怨过热茶和香油的不适。
Even after all these years, I feel a bit of pity for the little girl who was myself when I remember how many bitter trials she had to endure because of her wavy hair. Curly hair was not admired in Japan, so although I was younger than my sisters, on hairdressing day, which came 3 times in 10 days, I was placed in the care of the hairdresser as soon as she came into the house. This was unusual, for the eldest should always be attended to first. Immediately after the shampoo, she saturated my hair with almost boiling hot tea, mixed with some kind of stiffening oil. Then she pulled the hair back as tight as possible and tied it. Thus, I was left while she dressed the hair of my sisters. By that time, my whole head was stiff and my eyebrows pulled upward, but my hair was straight for the time being and could easily be arranged into 2 shining loops tied with polished cord, which was the proper style for me. From the time I can remember, I was always careful about lying quiet on my little wooden pillow at night. But by the next morning, there were sure to be little twists and my neck, and a suspicious curve in the loops on the top of the head. How I envied the long straight locks of the court ladies and the roll picture hanging in my room. One time I rebelled and used return words to my nurse, who was trying to comfort me during one of my lewing up experiences. Kind old Ishi forgave me at once, but my mother overheard and called me to her room. I was a little sullen, I remember, as I bowed and seated myself before her cushion, and she looked at me severely as she spoke. "Itsugo," she said, "do you not know that curly hair is like animal's hair? A samurai's daughter should not be willing to resemble a beast." I was greatly mortified and never again complained of the discomfort of hot tea and scented oil.
在我庆祝7年级的那天，我经历了如此深刻的羞辱，以至于想到它仍然让我心痛。这次庆祝活动是日本女孩生活中非常重要的事件，相当于给一位美国年轻女士举办的成年派对一样。我们所有的女亲戚都被邀请参加一场盛宴。我穿着一件漂亮的新礼服，占据了尊贵的位置。我的头发是精心梳理过的，但那天下雨了，我想一些顽固的小头发已经逃离了他们僵硬的监狱，因为我无意中听到一个阿姨说，给月宝穿一件漂亮的连衣裙是一种可耻的浪费，它只会把人们的注意力吸引到他那丑陋扭曲的头发上。一个孩子的感受是多么深刻啊！我真想在曾经我引以为傲的袍子里缩成一团，但我直视前方，一动也不动。随后，当医师拿着一些米饭走进来，看着我的时候，我看到了他眼中的痛苦。我知道他已经听到了。那天晚上，当他来给我换衣服时，他没有脱掉所有日本仆人上班时戴在头发上的蓝白小毛巾。我很惊讶，因为蒙着头出现在上级面前是不礼貌的，而医师总是彬彬有礼。我很快就发现了真相。晚餐一结束，他就去了寺庙，剪掉他华丽的直发，把它放在神龛前，祈祷众神把他的头发转给我。我的好医师，我从心里还感激他做出的爱的牺牲。
On the day of my 7th year celebration, I experienced a humiliation so deep that it still aches me to think of it. This celebration is a very important event in the life of a Japanese girl, as much so as her debut party is to an American young lady. All our women relatives were invited to a great feast where I, in a beautiful new gown, occupied the place of honor. My hair had been elaborately arranged, but the day was rainy, and I suppose some persistent small strands that escaped their stiff prison, for I overheard one of my aunts say, "It's a shameful waste to put a beautiful dress on Utsu. It only attracts attention to her ugly, twisty hair." How deeply a child can feel. I wanted to shrivel to nothingness inside the gown, of which I had been so proud. But I looked straight ahead and did not move. The next moment, when Ishi came in with some rice and looked at me, I saw the pain in her eyes, and I knew that she had heard. That night, when she came to undress me, she had not removed the little blue and white towel that all Japanese servants wear over the hair when at work. I was surprised, for it is not polite to appear before a superior with the head covered, and Ishi was always courteous. I soon found out the truth. She had gone to the temple as soon as the dinner was over, and cutting off her splendid straight hair, had placed it before the shrine, praying the gods to transfer her hair to me. My good Ishi, my heart thanks her yet for her loving sacrifice.
谁会说上帝没有怜悯这个单纯的灵魂，为拯救他所爱的孩子而做出的无知、充满爱心的努力？无论如何，当命运之手将我的脚步转向一片土地时，他的祈祷得到了回应。在那里，我的卷发不再给我带来悲伤或羞耻。
Who shall say that God did not pity the simple soul's ignorant, loving effort to save from humiliation the child she loved? At any rate, her prayer was answered when in later years the hand of fate turned my steps toward a land where my curly hair no longer caused me either sorrow or shame.